I'm going to answer a quick question before I get started from one of my commentators. She asked if I'm distributing the books on my own, and who all has them on various websites. In the information section on this event, you will see a little link to my website, and that link has basically the 5 or 6 retailers in which my book is being sold. It currently is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Bookmate, Shopmate, and Apple iBooks. The only link I don't have is the Apple iBooks because I don't own an Apple. I'm an Android girl. The book is currently available in ebooks, paperback, and hardback, and soon to be Audible later this year. So like I said, I just want to thank you all for joining me today. Words really cannot express how excited I am to be a published author of this book. I started writing this book in July of 2016, and it is June of 2020, and I have a hard copy in front of me. I honestly never thought this day would come. One of the struggles I didn't realize when I started writing this book was the emotion that would come with the memories. And it's one of those things that I was not prepared for. And I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And I literally had to stop writing this book because of that emotion. About a year went by before I even touched it again. And all of a sudden I heard about a former classmate of mine being diagnosed with breast cancer. And I knew as soon as I heard that news that I had to reach out to her. I needed to offer her some sort of hope, because that's what cancer survivors do to one another, is they offer encouragement, they offer hope, they offer just information. And her diagnosis forced me to open my book again and start reading through some of those chapters. And surprisingly, the emotion that I had felt a year earlier just wasn't there as much. And I was able to continue writing my book. And it's thanks to her diagnosis that this book is actually finalized, because I don't know if I would have been able to open it back up again if it weren't for her diagnosis. As I've said before, please, if you're just joining me, put a comment in the comment section. Say hello. Let me know where you're from. Like I said, I'm from Topeka right now, and I have friends all over the U.S. currently watching this, so I'd like to know where all of you are from. It also lets me know who is watching, so that way you can be entered into the raffle for the free autographed books that I will be sending after this. Another person joining me today, and it would not be a cancer event if Katie, my stuffed dog, did not join me. And I know my mom is laughing really hard right now that Katie is on my live feed. But this is the stuffed dog that was with me through my entire cancer diagnosis. And there's a part in the book where you will laugh when you hear about her. And I would just like to point out, so when you read the book, you know that she is a dog, long tail, long floppy ears, and not a cat. So I couldn't do this without her as well. She was with me for the entire 2.5 years, inpatient, outpatient, regardless of what was going on, she was in my hand. Being Father's Day weekend, I want to start by giving a big shout out to my dad. Why? Because if he had not said enough was enough, I may not be here. There was a day when I could not stand up. I could not straighten my back. And I called my dad, and he said, "I've had enough. We're going to the emergency room." And that emergency room visit led to the diagnosis of my cancer. So thank you, Dad. I love you. Thank you for always being there for me. Thank you for supporting me regardless of which direction my life is taken. And I am so proud to be your daughter. Secondly, my mom. My mom quit her job as a music teacher and became a full-time nurse for 6 months. This was not a job she wanted, and this was not a job she was cut out for. She did her best as a nurse, but music teaching was her primary, was what she was much better at. She definitely knew how to put a smile on my face every day. But when it came time to doing dressing changes and those nursingly duties, she did her best. I love you too, Mom. Thanks for being my best friend during that time. I want to give a big shout out to my husband, Lee, who's sitting over in the corner right now, kind of monitoring everything as well, technology-wise, so that everything goes right. Because without him, this book would never have been written. He gave me the ability to sit down and actually write the job, and write the book, and that's more meaningful to me than anything else. So I love you, honey. You were definitely worth the wait when it came to getting married. I want to give a big shout out to my cousin Michelle. I don't know if she's on here right now, but she's actually the one who designed the image on my book, the cross with the dolphin and the cancer ribbons. She designed that, and it's everything I hoped it would be. So I want to give a big shout out to my cousin Michelle. My friend Hillary doesn't realize I'm going to be highlighting her today, but I am, because she's the one who's going to be narrating my Audible book for me, which will, like I said, be available hopefully later this year. I'll make a big announcement when that is, but as you can imagine, doing an Audible book does take some time. But thank you, Hillary, for your willingness to narrate my book for me. What I've heard so far, you've done a great job. And last but not least, I cannot thank the one person I need to thank the most is God, because without him, none of this would be possible. He is the reason we're all here. He's the reason I'm alive, and he is the reason why my life has taken the path in which it did. One of my favorite quotes is actually from Walt Disney, where he once said, "It all started with a mouse." What that means to me is it just takes one thing to change your life, one thing to make you have that snowball effect of what has gone on. You know, I never would have imagined 26 years ago that I would be dealing with cancer. And I'm sure 26 years ago, laying in a hospital bed, I never thought I'd be sitting here sharing my book with you. I never would have guessed that this would have been a possibility. So you never know where life is going to take you. My mouse was my diagnosis. Something that was so big at that moment in time in my life and seems so small and far away now. My cancer diagnosis, basically the joy of having cancer as a child, and any of my childhood cancer friends will know, it gives you a topic for every single paper in high school and college. I don't even know how many papers I wrote that started on January 25th, 1994, I was diagnosed with cancer, and then had that paper relate to whatever the topic the teacher was saying. And I'm glad I had those papers, because a lot of those papers is where my memories came from for the book. It was funny rereading some of them because I had forgotten a lot of it. So one of the benefits of having cancer as a child. When I first started writing this book, I was writing this book for me. I was writing it for my family and friends. On my 21st birthday, I started writing my Cancerversary emails, which many of you know me for. And those Cancerversary emails is what led to this book being written. Many people over the years had told me, you know, hey, you should inspire, you should write a book, you should do something. And I always laughed it off, being like, you know what, I'm not a writer, I'm not going to write a book. But those Cancerversary emails is really what sparked that interest in writing. So when I first started writing, I was writing this book for me. over the course of the book, it changed to I was writing for others. I was writing for cancer survivors. I was writing for the caregivers. I was writing for the family members. I was writing for the people reading my book. As the book continued, and at the very tail end of my book, I started writing for God, to give glory to Him for what I'd been through. Now, a lot of people don't understand, how can you give glory to God when you've been diagnosed with cancer? But you can, because of all the positive things that have come out of it. Cancer isn't a death sentence, it's a life sentence. It teaches you how to live, it teaches you how to appreciate, it teaches you how to tell your family members that you love them. It teaches you to smell the roses and stop and take time. To me, that's what cancer is. And so, yes, I can give glory to God through my diagnosis. I just want to stop, take a moment, because I know a lot of people have joined, and I just want to, again, remind people, please comment, say hi, tell me where you're from, so this way I know that you're watching, so that way you can be part of that raffle for the autographed books I am giving away at the end. My cousin Michelle literally just joined. She missed the part where I thanked her for being the designer of my book. And actually it came at the perfect time because I just want to talk about the cover of the book briefly. Like I said, she designed the image on the book. And it's exactly what I had in my mind when it came to what was going to be on the cover of my book. The cross is actually the replica of the cross that I have as a tattoo on my ankle, which is something my grandpa actually designed many, many years ago. I believe actually in 1980, the year I was born, believe it or not. The ribbons on here, you have the orange ribbon and the gold ribbon. The orange ribbon represents the leukemia. That's leukemia's color ribbon. And the gold ribbon is childhood cancer color. So having the two cancer color ribbons represented is extremely meaningful. And then often people wonder about the dolphins. And the dolphins are actually the symbol of my survival and the symbol of of hope for me. So the fact that faith, hope, and cancer are all represented here in this logo I can't even express how excited I was when I first saw the image. It was a very giddy feeling, kind of when I first held the book in my hands. So I just wanted to explain that again, and again, big shout out and thank you to my cousin Michelle for doing that for me. You know, a lot of people ask me, why I write, and like I said, I do it to bring awareness, to bring glory to God and things like that. Unfortunately, childhood cancer, touched my life 26 years ago. And as my mom just yells at me for saying the word yes. Childhood cancer is more prevalent than people realize. You don't really hear about childhood cancer until your life is affected by it. And then all of a sudden, once your life is affected by it, you hear this person had it and that person had it. And even if it's not childhood cancer, most likely every single person knows somebody who had cancer, regardless of it's childhood cancer or not. Excuse me, my throat is dry. But I just wanted to touch on some cancer facts. And again, as a reminder of this is why I do what I do. 43 children a day are diagnosed with cancer. That's 43 children. That's more than a classroom of kids are diagnosed with cancer a day. Childhood cancer is not just one disease. Just taking some medicine. Childhood cancer is not just one disease. There's actually 12 major types of pediatric cancers and actually over 100 subtypes. One of the things that's hardest with childhood cancers is the diagnosis stage. When you go to a doctor, and I fell under this category, I had pain in my back. When I go to a doctor and I said, hey, I had severe pain in my back, my doctors weren't originally thinking, oh, she has cancer, she must have leukemia. The doctors rule out everything else, and cancer is always the last resort, which often means that child is being diagnosed at the late stages of the cancer diagnosis. I don't know if there's a way to change that, unfortunately, just because cancers don't really have a set symptom list when it comes to childhood cancers. Just for example, with leukemia, you can have back pain, you can have no symptoms, you can have, if a wound that doesn't heal, you can have a fever that doesn't go away, you can be diagnosed because they thought you had mono. All of those things, because leukemia is a blood disease, it really can be anything for you to be diagnosed. More than 95% of childhood cancer survivors deal with significant health issues by the time they're 45 years old. And I fall under that category. Unfortunately, it's the side effects of the chemo that I had, 26 years ago. And even the children now, who, yes, they're on like slightly better, regimens of protocols for their diagnosis, the risk of long-term effects are still there. And as childhood cancer survivors, we live with those for the rest of our lives. And that's things people don't normally take into consideration. Cancer is actually the #1 cause of death in children. And that's, in my mind, that's not acceptable. I pray for the day when not only do we have a cure for cancer, but we also know the cause. Because if we know the cause, we can stop it before it even starts. On average, 17% of children die within 5 years of their diagnosis. Among those that survive after 5 years, 18% will die within 30 years of their diagnosis. And again, that statistic is not acceptable to me. Nobody should be dying of this disease. The year's 2020. We should know a lot more than we do about childhood cancers. The funding, unfortunately, is not there. And so that's, again, one reason I'm writing this book is to just bring awareness to the fact that cancer survivors are out there. And more of us are surviving. Survival doesn't end with treatment. Like I said, many childhood cancer survivors face long-term effects, such as psychosocial issues, depression, survivor guilt, to name a few. In 2013, there were 390,000 childhood cancer survivors in the United States. And that number was supposed to grow to about 500,000 this year. That's crazy. With all of us surviving out there, you would think, more and more survivorship programs would be out there, more and more funding, more and more attention would be out there to, hey, we exist. And there slowly are starting to be. But again, part of this writing this book is to get the awareness out that childhood cancers do exist. We are out here. And here are some of the issues that we do face. The last statistics I want to talk about is approximately 1 in 530 young adults between the ages of 20 and 39 is actually a childhood cancer survivor. I remember when I was in college, the girl who lived across the hall from me in the dorm, she was a childhood cancer survivor. And I was shocked because she was the first person outside of my hospital that I had met. And she was, just a few doors down in my dorm. And it was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, you're a survivor too. We are out there. And, it's just exciting to meet. It's really exciting to be able to touch base and talk because we all understand what we went through. Before I move on, I just again want to say, hey, thank you for joining me. If you haven't mentioned it already, please say hi so I know that you're watching. I appreciate you being here. I'd love to know who all is watching. I see a lot of friends, even my old principals here, which I think is awesome. So I'm really excited. like I said, having that diagnosis is one of the first stages of dealing with childhood cancer, and it's the hardest part because the doctors don't automatically look at it. Said again. But I want to read to you a section from my book that talks about what it was like to be diagnosed. I sat in the bed looking around. I was in room 504 and there was a raccoon painting on the wall. My bed was next to the window. I was in a shared room and a curtain divided the room in half. I was grateful no one was in the other bed as I didn't want to share my room with anyone. There was a TV but no clock, which I thought was odd. There was a pull-out chair Mom used as a bed. After my nurse helped us get settled, Dad went home and it was just Mom and me and a new stuffed bear I named Sicky. Sicky was a gift from the admissions department. Mom picked it out especially for me because she knew I love stuffed animals. Sicky got her name because I was too sick to think of one. Mom and I were exhausted and we both physically and emotionally, and we quickly fell asleep. The next morning I woke up to more blood tests. We went to a treatment room down the hall where I was able to have my first lumbar puncture, a spinal tap, and bone marrow biopsy. I laid on the table holding my stuffed dog Katie and was given anesthesia to put me to sleep. When I woke up, I was told the doctor had to climb onto a treatment table to get enough leverage he needed to get the bone marrow because it was too thick to flow through the syringe. I didn't know what that meant, but I was guessing it wasn't normal. I was also told during the procedure I purred like a kitten while the nurse comforted me by rubbing my leg. It was then I realized you can do strange things under anesthesia. From there, it was a waiting game. I waited for nurses to bring me pain medicine, and I waited, but I didn't have to wait too long. Luckily, sorry, I can't read out loud. My doctor came in and delivered the news. Acute lymphocytic leukemia. Further tests revealed I specifically had pre-B cell positive acute lymphocytic leukemia. Cancer. I had cancer. I immediately felt a sense of relief. It didn't matter I had cancer. All that mattered was that I had proof my pain was real, and they knew what was causing it. I didn't understand how serious the cancer was because I had never known anyone who had cancer. My only understanding of cancer was a story I had read in English class a few months earlier about a girl with leukemia who had treatment and survived. To me, cancer was a good thing because it caused my pain, and it also meant my pain would be gone as soon as the treatment started. My doctor went on to tell us the leukemia was causing my pain. I had very little healthy bone marrow. My bone marrow was 99 plus leukemia cells. And I was lucky because there's only a short window of time where I can be diagnosed with this specific type of leukemia. If I had blood work done earlier in the month during previous visits, it would not have shown the leukemia cells. And I would not have had a reason for them to check my blood in the emergency room. He also said that if I had not been diagnosed when I had been, I likely would have gone into a coma and died within 3 or more days, give or take. I never would have seen my 14th birthday, which I then celebrated 5 days later with my friends. A hospital isn't the best place to have a birthday, but it's better than not having a birthday at all. The girl in the story we read lost her hair. So my first question to the doctor was, am I going to lose my hair? If you know me, I didn't really like my hair. It was much too thin and I couldn't do anything with it. I followed that with, I'm not going to have to do a science fair project this year. And I know my principal's laughing right now. I was supposed to be working on a hypothesis and experiments, but because of the pain, I hadn't even started and I was very behind. Cancer would get me out of completing the project. My parents had many questions, although I only remember one. They asked if being diagnosed with leukemia was better or worse than anemia, because those were the two options they had been told when I was in the emergency room. My mom was surprised when the doctor said leukemia was a better diagnosis. My doctor explained that leukemia is treatable and curable, whereas anemia was not. My dad had more questions than my mom, but like me, she didn't understand the seriousness of what was happening. She stayed with me in the hospital while Dad went home to call the family. He called Teresa first, followed by my grandparents, aunts, and uncles. I can only imagine what those phone calls were like. Mom called her principal to inform her that she would not be able to teach for the next couple of weeks and I'd not be returning to school. My cancer diagnosis changed my whole life. I was bombarded with so many new experiences. I'd never been in a hospital before. I'd never taken so many pills before. And most of all, I had never been that scared before. I wasn't scared of the leukemia, but of everything that was going on around me. All the new people, new concepts, and a whole new lifestyle. In a matter of hours, the way I thought about life changed. I felt I had lost all control of my body, the control that had been placed in the hands of my doctors, and in turn, I counted on them to get me better. Cancer is a terrible thing, but when you're diagnosed with it, you can't focus on the idea that it will kill you. You have to remain positive as you can and get through that treatment. So as you can see, my cancer diagnosis, yes, cancer's horrible, but for me, it was more of a relief of finally those 2 months of having severe back pain. I had it justified. I could legitimately say, yes, I had back pain where people, I didn't think had been watching me or believing me. So, just having that validation of what was causing that pain, nothing is worse than knowing something's not right with you and not having a clue what it was. And so for me, from the get-go, my cancer diagnosis was a positive thing. And I was able to just build on that positivity. As many of you know, I've said this in the past, but that positivity became prayer. And prayer became a big part of my coping mechanisms to deal with cancer. And it's just become a coping mechanism to deal with life, regardless of what situation you're in. Like I said, with everything going on in the world right now, I would love to have an in-person launch party, but unfortunately I can't. And so what do? You make the best of it and have a little virtual party. And I am so grateful that everybody so far has been able to join me. And if you haven't already, please say hi in the comment section so that I know you're watching. I see family members on here. I see, friends I've met through having cancer. And, what touches my heart too is I have, RV friends on here as well who, I've only met once, yet are supportive. So, the amount of people I have here watching, it really does, make me smile. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. As I've said, cancer, surviving cancer isn't just about surviving the treatment. I had 2.5 years of chemo. That's how long typically a leukemia diagnosis is, to make sure that all of the leukemia is out of your body. But my book isn't just about surviving the treatment. It's about surviving life afterwards. What people don't realize is, there's two parts of a cancer diagnosis. It's the treatment part and it's the navigating life afterwards. And let me tell you, I had no idea how to navigate life after treatment. There were no organizations. There was nothing out there for survivors at the time because survivors really didn't exist. I'm part of that first generation of people who were surviving more than they were dying. And so, I figured it out the best I could, and I made a lot of mistakes, unfortunately. One of the struggles I had was just dealing with school, dealing with my classmates. I had no way of relating to them. For me, I was diagnosed, with cancer when I was 14 years old. When you're a teenager, you're supposed to be, autonomous. You're supposed to be breaking away from your family and your parents and kind of figuring out your freedom. Well, I was reliant on my parents at that time. I was reliant on the hospital. I was reliant on the doctors, the nurses, the chemo to keep me alive. And I had no way of really relating with my friends. And it took many years for me to be able to do so. I want to read you another segment of my book to really understand how that was. The hardest part about surviving cancer was the expectation that I would return to a normal teenage life. How was I supposed to do that when I never had a normal teenager? By the time I finished treatment, I was 16, and the only teenage life I knew was hospitals and cancer treatment. How was I supposed to fit in when I had nothing in common with my peers? At the time, survivorship programs didn't exist to help me navigate life afterwards. I reached out to childhood cancer groups on the internet, and I have found a few friends online. We helped each other figure life out, but none of us had any real advice to give because we were all experiencing it for the first time. After everything I'd gone through, I struggled with my identity. My school friends were athletes or musicians, and I couldn't play sports anymore. And if you know me, I never played an instrument. I didn't have the energy to join clubs or extracurricular activities. And by the time I did, the clubs had already formed and friendships had already been created. And I didn't want to be a new member so late in the game. So my identity became a cancer survivor. I often feel like I was cheated out of a true high school experience. I felt people expected that once I completed treatment, I would just pick up where I left off and continue life. But life changes, priorities change, dreams change, relationships change. It isn't easy picking up the pieces and moving on. I discovered that life changes for everyone. My normal wasn't other people's normal. And that's okay, because normal is different for everyone. Over the years, I have been jealous of people who I perceive to have normal lives. I was jealous of my siblings. For years, I wondered what they had to worry about. They don't have to worry about health insurance like I do. They don't have to worry about follow-up tests and secondary cancers. Their life seemed perfect. But then I realized no one's life is perfect. What is normal for one person is not for another. A person's normal is an evolved feeling. A person's normal changes with a diagnosis, a marriage, a birth of a child, a death of a loved one, and so on. I'd always dreamt of working with animals, so after high school, I attended The Ohio State University to study zoology. There, my identity crisis continued, but the difference was no one knew my history. All my high school classmates knew I had cancer, knew I had to leave class to go to the hospital, and knew I couldn't do as much as they did because I was regaining my strength and rebuilding my immune system. But my college friends had no idea. All they talked about was what they'd done in high school, what sports they played, the art they had created, the people they dated. But I didn't do any of those things. All I did was beat cancer. Cancer was all I knew, so that's what I talked about. I later came to find out that my friends thought I talked about cancer too much, which made them uncomfortable. I couldn't relate to my classmates in high school because I didn't have the energy to do the things they did. And I couldn't relate to my college friends because I didn't do anything in high school, nothing to talk about. No one wanted to hear what I did pre-cancer in middle school. They didn't care I was the best bunter in softball in the 7th grade. So, as you can see, there is a struggle there. And it's not just for, me and childhood cancer survivors. It's for any cancer survivor and how you navigate, life afterwards. Because there's always that expectation of, oh, you're just going to pick up where you left off. And that's not how it works. And it's not something you're told as a cancer survivor of, hey, there's a second part of survival that you need to figure out on your own. Thankfully, there are organizations out there that are there for survivors. It took me 14 years after my diagnosis for me to find those organizations. And now I'm a supporter of them. I help out as much as I can because I know how meaningful those survivorship organizations are for those individuals, so people don't have to feel alone like I did. I recently last year met a girl who she's 40 like I am. She's a cancer survivor like I am. The only difference is she was diagnosed at birth and I was not. And even though, you know, we were diagnosed at different stages in our life, you know, we became truly best friends. We call each other cancer twins, because we know exactly what it is like to grow up as a survivor. I'm going to take a short break because my husband needs to change the battery in the camera, because I am filming this at the exact same time. Like I said, if you have not said hi already in the comment section, feel free to do so. This way I know who is watching. Big shout out to, you know, some individuals on here. I know that my sister's watching, some of my cousins, and so I just want to, you know, like I said, say thank you while my husband is changing the battery. And I'm going to take a drink because my throat is still quite dry. He just dropped the battery. If you haven't checked it out already, there is a link on the comment section of this. And I've also posted on my Facebook page a link to my website, leukemiagirl.com. And on that link, you can find the 6 retailers where you can purchase the book. I ask that, you know, after you purchase the book and read the book, please leave reviews. When it comes to being a self-publisher, as I am, reviews are a really big thing. It helps people find your book. It helps people get that book out there. And Amazon likes when those reviews are put in. So feel free to share the book with others as well as leave reviews. I would appreciate it. All right. Like I said, for me, my cancer was a blessing. And for years and years and years, I only saw it as a blessing. I think that comes from my strong Catholic faith. You know, what my mom always told me of thinking positive, you know, when I was diagnosed, just the whole, like, you know, always just being able to see what was, you know, the good things. Every day when I was in the hospital, and I can't even remember how long this went on. At the end of the day, my mom and I would talk about what was the good things that happened that day. And she would write it down. Unfortunately, I have no idea where that list is at the moment. But taking the time every day to write, you know, that good thing that happened is really important, because it gets you, A, to focus on that positive experience, and B, you can look back and remember. And can I get another shot? And, you know, over the years, unfortunately, because of life and things that happen, you know, I started realizing that, you know, cancer wasn't always beneficial. You know, cancer was taking away my friends, and I started seeing my cancer as a curse. It was something that, you know, I need to take another medicine. If you don't, what I realize now is cancer can be both. It can be a blessing and a curse. Because every life experience, no matter what it is, has two sides. It has a good side and it has a bad side. The key is to be able to see both sides, but not dwell on both sides for too long, especially the negative side. You know, see the positive that is going on. And I want to read an excerpt regarding hope to you guys. I start by talking about Amanda and David, and just to give you a little background, they are 2 friends I met when I was living in a different state, and both of them were young adults when they were diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately, both of them lost their lives to cancer, and their deaths had a significant impact on my life. After saying goodbye to Amanda and David, I got angry. I was already feeling depressed, and I was tired of losing friends. tired of the grieving process, and tired of trying to understand why I survived and they didn't. I hated cancer for the first time. I saw cancer more as a curse than a blessing. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I believed that I would survive. There was a purpose for me here on earth, and it had yet to be fulfilled. However, after their funerals, I struggled with understanding my purpose. At this time in my life, I had already been dealing with depression for a few years and felt David and Amanda had so much more to offer the world than I did. They provided hope and inspired so many people where I wasn't doing much of anything. I had survivor's guilt. I had a difficult time understanding why some people survived cancer and others didn't. Was their purpose on earth to be fulfilled through their death? When David died, this quote from the Bible was on his memory card. This illness does not lead to death. It's for the glory of God, so the Son of God may be glorified through it. John 11:4. At that time, I had no idea what that quote meant, and I couldn't even fathom how David's last days he turned to this verse. How can glory of God be shared through his death? It took me years to make sense of it. I now know that it is through sharing my story, David's story, and Amanda's story, that I give him glory. The faith Amanda and David had given him glory to God. I am a witness to God's love and greatness. All the things that I perceived as a curse were part of God's plan for me, and everything happened for a reason. In the darkest moments, God was with me. I grew stronger because of my experience, the good and the bad. Through their deaths, I learned to find hope in the darkest moments, to celebrate their lives and my own, because we never know when God is going to call us home. How I felt about being a survivor changed. At first, for many years, it was about the joy of beating cancer and about living. As I got older, it became more about merely surviving the loneliness, the sadness that all my friends were gone, the sadness that my friends were no longer in my life because of cancer, the feeling I was alive and they weren't, the feeling of being different. Being a survivor felt like a black cloud over me. Occasionally, I was able to see through that cloud and saw a rainbow. Eventually, the black cloud disappeared, and I was proud of being a survivor again. I survived for those who didn't. I survived to help others who are newly diagnosed, to offer hope and encouragement. I'm a survivor, I just lost my place. I'm a survivor not because I fought harder, but because I believe in God, but because He had plans for me. My plans are through life, not through death. What I realize now is it's okay to hate cancer, to yell, to scream, to cry over a diagnosis. Cancer's an ugly thing. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're young or old, rich or poor, black or white. All cancer wants to do is destroy your body. I didn't hate cancer until 20 years after my diagnosis. I wasn't angry I had cancer, but I was angry at everything cancer took from me, which then led to my depression. I was angry that I never had a chance to be normal. In 2009, my 15th cancer anniversary, I reached the point in my life where I was a cancer survivor longer than I was a normal kid. I realized my normal life was after cancer. I thought about what life would have been if I'd never been diagnosed. What would I look like? What would I be doing? What I have been interested in. What I didn't realize was there was no set normal. Everyone's normal is different, and I eventually embraced the fact that my normal included having leukemia. Cancer helped shape who I became, and it led me down the path that God had planned for me. I often talk about God and my faith. Clearly, faith is very important to me, and it's just, we all have a path. And it's up to us to, make those decisions, whether or not we want to follow that path or not. And I am lucky enough to be able to realize that and to thank God that no matter where I am in my life, I believe I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like I said, 26 years ago, I would never have guessed that I'd be on camera right now talking to you about my book, because I wasn't a writer. I wasn't somebody who had a desire to share my story. And now, to be able to put this out there, to be able to, share the good news with the entire world on this level is just incredible to me. And again, I just want to thank you all for supporting me through this entire process. Be it you were there for me when I was diagnosed and you sent me cards, you came to visit me. A lot of my nurses are on here, and, thank you to you, because you actually dealt with the teenage Carolyn dealing with cancer. And as you read in my book, that wasn't a pretty Carolyn. And a lot of my nurses actually say they had Carolyn patients because I was not the best patient. And I realize that now. And through writing this book, there was a lot of self-reflection. A lot of things happened to me, a lot of things I didn't understand at the time and I became angry about. And now I understand. I understand why my friends responded the way they did. I understand why my siblings responded the way I did, or my family members and things like that. Because I can look back and be like, oh, that makes sense now. Everybody deals with cancer. Everybody deals with it in their own way. When you have your only experience with cancer is a loved one dying, me saying, hey, I had cancer, that brings up memories of that loved one dying. It doesn't bring up memories of me surviving. So we have to meet everybody where they're at. We have to support cancer survivors. A lot of times we have no idea what to say to somebody when they're diagnosed. And honestly, that's the perfect thing to say. Hey, you were just diagnosed with cancer. I have no idea what to say to you, but I just want to let you know that I'm here for you. It's as simple as that. And I think people are afraid to say that, but address that big elephant in the room. I want to open this up to the time. I know I've been doing a lot of the talking, but I want to open up. If you have any questions for me, I wish this were in person, because then we could talk amongst one another. But if you have any questions, please, put it on the comment section right now, and I will answer all the questions. So feel free to, like I said, ask a question, ask away. I am an open book. But in the meantime, while you guys are thinking of questions, again, I just want to, hold my book in the hand in front of you, because this is the most incredible feeling ever. I am literally a published author right now. I'm speechless, to tell you the truth, when it comes to that.
Books into the National Archives and everything.
Yeah, and eventually it's actually going to be in the Library of Congress, which is, blows my mind as well. Who knew? I am going to throw this out there. One of my goal for this book is to help that one person. I've always had very simple goals for myself. When I worked in a nursing home, my goal was to make one person smile a day. As long as I made one person smile a day, my job was done. When it comes to this book, my job is to make one person feel as if they're not alone. And I will never know who that person is. But as long as one person reads this book and says, I'm not alone, or, you know what, hey, I just found out my friend was diagnosed, maybe I should just say hi to them. That's all that matters to me when writing this book is, helping people understand what cancer patients go through. Because even though I was a child when I was diagnosed, and that's what this book was about, cancer as an adult is just as crappy as cancer as a kid, if not worse. I've always said cancer as a child is better because you get a special wish trip, you get all the support, you get toys, you get colorful hospitals, you get things like that. You get out of school. Cancer as an adult, you get, the cold white hospital rooms. You still have to deal with, work and possibly children and all those things. You don't get a special wish trip. And as sad as it is, I always said that if you die as a child, you get a whole lot more people at your funeral than as you do as an adult. My grandparents always cringed when I said that. But it's a sad but true statement. And I also want to let you know, as you know, I do RV full time. Like I said, currently I'm in Topeka, Kansas. If you are interested in having me come speak to a school, a church group, whatever group, I would love to come and share my story with people, share the hope that, is in life. I dealt with depression, sharing how to survive that amongst cancer. So if you are interested in having me come and speak to whatever group you're interested is, please let me know, because I would love to do that and we can make arrangements. Like I said, I do RV full time, but I do head back to Ohio at least once a year to visit family and things like that. Otherwise, our family would kill us. And if you're in other parts of the country, hire RV so I can come to you, which is really cool. So, again, I just want to thank you for your support. If you haven't already, please visit my leukemiagirl.com website. It has information about the book. It has the book is in black and white. If you want to see the pictures in color, please visit my website, leukemiagirl.com, to see those pictures in color. For some of you, you will notice, I want to give a shout out to my friend who's on here, I believe, and she was here for my 14th birthday. One of those pictures actually includes the big stuffed bear Sugar that she gave me. Is in one of those pictures. So I just want to say thank you with me and Katie for you guys joining me this afternoon. And if nobody has any questions, I'm going to end here. Feel free to go out, let me know what you think about the book. I love it. Oh, wait, there's a question. Besides my cancerversary, what do you consider the biggest milestone along the way? Ooh, that's hard. Besides my cancerversary, what do you consider the biggest milestone along the way? And what's my happiest memory during treatment? Okay, my happiest memory during treatment actually involves Katie, and there's a part about it in the book. So I had a major medical mistake where I had to have emergency surgery, and I was headed to surgery, and in a children's hospital, they allow you to bring your stuffed animals into the surgery room with you. They put little armbands around them that say with your name on it, and I made them make sure that said Katie Conkle on it. And as I was getting ready, one of the nurses said, "What's the name of your cat?" Not a cat. This is a dog. I got mad that that individual nurse called Katie a cat. So I made the nurse apologize to Katie. I wanted him to apologize to Katie for calling her a cat. Yes, I realize it's a stuffed animal, and I realized I was 14 years old at the time, but it was very important to me. That nurse was not about to apologize to a stuffed animal. And the other nurse who was with him basically realized I was not moving. I was not going to surgery until Katie was apologized to. And so that day, that nurse eventually did apologize to Katie for calling her a cat. Again, does not look anything like a cat. Has long tail, long floppy ears, long nose. And I think that nurse, I do feel bad that I kind of took that nurse's dignity away that day. But I think that nurse realized if a child has a stuffed animal, that stuffed animal means a lot to them. And I hope they realize that, I hope that helped that nurse grow to some degree, again, even though I took that dignity away. But that is one of my favorite memories just because it's hilarious and it does show my true personality when it comes to that. But overall, I think my biggest milestone that I am proud of is I can't pick just one. I think, finishing chemo in April of 1996 was the most important to me. But I think, finishing college was a huge milestone. Finishing grad school was a huge milestone. I think, being able to work with cancer patients in a children's hospital probably was my biggest milestone because that was something that I'd always wanted. And that was, a dream come true to me. So I think really probably that milestone. But I can honestly say, even going as far as, get that milestone of marrying Lee, because I never really thought that would happen. Well, getting married would happen. So the fact that, I'm able to do that, when you realize that death is so close and that, death can take everything away, every milestone is really important. I celebrate every birthday. Everything is very important, because if I hadn't been diagnosed, I would never be celebrating any of those things. So I can't pick just one milestone along the way that was the biggest thing that was important to me. Again, if you have not made a comment about saying hey on the Facebook feed, please do that, so that I know that you have watched, and you can be entered into that drawing. I will be posting online on my pages who are the winners of the free autograph books, and I then will be contacting you personally for your address so that I can send them to you. So if you haven't already, please comment, hey, hi, I've been watching, just so I know. If you have no more questions, I'm going to pause right there. I hope you guys enjoyed today. I hope you guys enjoy the book. I really did put a lot of time, energy into it. And the funny thing is, even reading the book, there's a lot of memories that have come up for me that I could have put in the book, but I forgot. But that's what happens when you write a book. Again, if you haven't visited already, please visit www.leukemiagirl.com. My book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Bookmate, Bookshop, and Apple iBooks. It's available in ebook, paperback, and hardback book, and eventually audiobook later this year. I do have another book in my head later. Who knows? Maybe I'll have a couple other books. One of them is about specifically surviving depression, because I think that's something, finding that happiness after that. In that book, that book already has a title called Orange Dinosaurs, because orange dinosaurs just make me happy. As my husband laughs at me. So, like I said, thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate your support, and I hope you have a great Father's Day weekend, and just a good weekend in general. And I am going to end there. So thank you, and goodbye.